Okay, well, Silicon Valley has certainly become a center of entrepreneurship. And I think this is driven to a considerable extent by what happened in the early semiconductor industry. Before that, the companies that were here tended to be quite stable. They were companies like Hewlett-Packard and Varian that had developed significant businesses but stayed together. But when the silicon got here, initially with Bill Shockley, things began to change. Bill was setting up a new company and hired several of us. And after some problems with his management style, a group of us decided we had to leave. And fortunately, one of the group contacted a friend of his father's who'd been a stockbroker and said, there are a bunch of us who like working together. We're all looking for jobs. Is there a company that'd like to hire us all? And that was really, I think, a major step in the beginning of the entrepreneurship. Although none of us were really entrepreneurs then, it kind of tipped the scale in that direction. Fairchild Semiconductor, which was what was founded by this group after a search where everybody else turned them down, then became a hotbed of innovation and entrepreneurship. It seemed like every time we had a new product idea, we had several spin-offs. And most of the companies around here, even today, you can probably trace their lineage back to what happened at Fairchild. It was really the place that got the engineer entrepreneur really moving. I benefited from that, being first involved in the Fairchild Group, and then several years later, with Bob Noyce, founded Intel. I guess by that time I had become an entrepreneur, although I always characterized myself as an accidental entrepreneur. Had it not been for the negative experience at Shockley, it's doubtful I ever would have taken the entrepreneurial route. The transition from the transistors to the integrated circuit wasn't an easy birth. Jay Lass can tell you about that. He was responsible for the program at Fairchild in those days. The things we tried to do initially were really quite difficult. In fact, we processed silicon wafers at such high temperature and for so long that they came out looking like potato chips, all curled. We didn't have a good process for the first couple of years, and it was a struggle to make the few integrated circuits we did. But then we got a couple of new technologies. In particular, we got epitaxial growth, which gave us a lot more flexibility in the structures we could build. And that was a major breakthrough. I guess the next transition after that was the movement from bipolar transistors, which were fast but difficult to make, to MOS transistors, which at the time were relatively slow, but had tremendous advantage for making complex arrays. And the technology has continued to evolve through a variety of steps that let us make more and more complex things. And transistors have gotten cheaper and cheaper. Some of the most recent circuits have literally billions of transistors on a chip and sell for dollars. Our first transistors we sold for $150 a piece. Now you can get a transistor for a nanobuck if you buy enough of them at one time. A complicated technology like semiconductors and the devices you build is a result of the contributions of a whole lot of people. Now, along the way, there will be some especially important ones. It could have been the planar transistor at Fairchild, the integrated circuit, the microprocessor. Those are the things that you tend to emphasizes the appropriate steps. But every one of those has a whole bunch of detailed steps underneath it that's necessary to make it successful. When we set up Intel, for example, we had to get to about 100 people before we had all the bases covered. It just required that broad and that many different things being tackled at the same time. This included the various steps in the processing technology, the circuit design, the testing, and such mundane things as keeping the facilities working. It's a complicated operation. It requires a lot of various talents. I think that's the case with most of these businesses. One person may get credit as having the basic idea that was being pursued, but it's usually the output of a group that makes it successful.